Thomas Jefferson's vision of the yeoman farmer has been embalmed in myth, stripped of its essence by the passage of time and the calcification of history. But beneath the pastoral nostalgia and agrarian romanticism lies a philosophical truth, one still burning with relevance. Jefferson wasn't idolizing dirt, nor fetishizing toil. He was articulating a foundational condition for democracy, that liberty cannot exist without sovereignty, that participation in a free society requires independence from the coercive forces that reduce a citizen to a subject. And in Jefferson's time, land ownership, specifically the capacity to farm one's own land, was the only reliable guarantor of that independence. The farm was the architecture of autonomy. It wasn't sacred because it grew food. It was sacred because it housed liberty. In an age before electricity, before mass industry, before centralized infrastructure, farming represented the only path to self-sufficiency. If you could feed yourself, shelter yourself, and sell a surplus on your terms, then you could speak, vote, and act without begging permission. You owed no one for your bread. You feared no one for your roof. You were free not by law, but by reality. Jefferson feared the erosion of this condition. He understood that dependence breeds submission, that once a person's survival hangs on a wage, a master, a landlord, or a system they cannot control, their consent is no longer freely given. It is extorted by circumstance. His ideal was not about crops, but conditions. He yearned for a civilization where every person could stand in the polis as an equal, not because the law said so, but because their life gave them the ground to stand on. But Jefferson's vision was never universally applied. It excluded women, erased indigenous sovereignty, and was built on the backs of the enslaved. His dream was rooted in land, but that land was taken. His call for liberty was righteous, but it rang hollow for those denied even personhood. The yeoman was free because others were bound. That ideal was then buried beneath industrialization. Mechanization swallowed the family farm. Urbanization dissolved self-sufficiency. Land concentrated. Markets consolidated, and liberty, once rooted in the soil, was leased back to us through rent, wages, and credit. Jefferson's yeoman became a quaint figure in a world of consumers. And so the ideal was dismissed as obsolete. But ideals do not die. They evolve. Enter the sovereign home. The sovereign home is not a farmhouse. It is not a technological gimmick or a gadget-ridden fortress. It is the architectural realization of the Enlightenment, a structure designed to maximize liberty through autonomy. It embodies the same principle Jefferson fought for, conditions of independence, but in the material context of our time. It is built not around oxen and grain, but around solar panels, water reclamation, waste cycling, modular fabrication, and decentralized energy. It can feed, power, heat, and shelter its occupant without permission or purchase. It achieves in the 21st century what the farm did in the 18th, the restoration of the sovereign citizen. The sovereign home is enlightenment reborn as infrastructure. It is an answer to the same question. How do we make liberty real, not just rhetorical? How do we build a society where people are not dependent on systems they do not govern or beholden to masters they cannot name? Where the political is not merely a performance, but a practice rooted in tangible independence. Jefferson's genius lay in recognizing that liberty is not an abstraction. It must be grounded. Theories of rights are meaningless if a person cannot act on them. A starving man is not free. A houseless mother is not free. A debt-ridden worker chained to a job by necessity is not free. Freedom is not the right to choose between masters. It is the absence of the need for one. This is where the sovereign home reclaims the mantle. By liberating the individual from systemic dependence, it restores the capacity to choose authentically, meaningfully, and without coercion. It makes democracy not a hope, but a possibility. It turns voting from theater into power. This is not a utopian fantasy. It is a design principle. Enlightenment thinkers were not naive. They understood that systems determine outcomes. Just as a corrupt monarchy cannot produce a just society, a civilization built on economic dependence cannot yield free individuals. To be free, the human being must be sovereign, and sovereignty begins at the threshold of one's home. The sovereign home, then, is not just a building. It is the foundation of the Enlightenment's next chapter. It is the physical manifestation of human dignity, the dwelling place of the autonomous individual who can say no to exploitation, yes to conscience, and I will to self-actualization. It is the root condition from which all other rights bloom. And unlike Jefferson's vision, it is not limited by acreage. It does not demand conquest, colonization, or ownership of vast tracts of land. It is scalable, modular, universalizable. It can rise in a forest or on a city block. It can thrive in clusters or in solitude, not as a retreat from society, but as a veritable island fortress of autonomy. The sovereign home is not a commune or a compromise. It is a self-sufficient, self-repairing, self-defending unit of post-scarcity civilization, capable of sustaining life without servitude and liberty without permission. A stronghold of the sovereign self, designed to make external dependence optional and landlordism obsolete. What matters is not where it is, but what it enables. A life free from coercion, and a voice that cannot be silenced by hunger or debt. In this way, the sovereign home is the democratization of sovereignty itself. It transforms liberty from a privilege into a baseline, from a precarious possession into a human birthright, designed, embedded, and defended by architecture itself. So Jefferson's dream was not a dead letter. It was the first draft. The sovereign home is the redraft, not of his nostalgia, but of his purpose. It strips away the agrarian costume and reveals the philosophical engine underneath. A structure that breeds independence, empowers participation, and immunizes liberty against the erosion of dependence. In reclaiming this essence, we do not go back. We go forward. We do not resurrect the yeoman farmer. We fulfill his function. And in doing so, we make liberty livable again.